Now today we're going to look at David and and maybe just touch on Solomon.
Ah,
Uh, 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 and I tried to send you all, I think it was on Monday or Sunday, I don't remember. I tried to send you all some readings for class, and I just could not send them. They would not go. The email would not send. But then last night when I sent you the reminder for today, I was able to put it in there and hit send. So when you cannot sleep, you can read them. Um, um, both for David and for Solomon. It's a very David is very extensive because he takes up about, I think, half of First Samuel, at least from chapter 16 to the end, and then he's the whole book of Second Samuel and part of First Kings as well. So there's a lot to read on David. No doubt, being he's seen as the greatest king in
Doesn't seem
Israel
to be
of his
working.
time. So that
It's on
uh,
mute, so they're
that
not
is quite
hearing
that
you.
is quite understandable. So today we're not going to read any passages per se. I will particularly ask that you take notes. I will send you just a brief synopsis from the Life Application Bible that I have sent in the past on David and on Solomon. But I will hope that you will spend the time reading the passages that I sent to you last night, so that you will have a better feel as to who David is and what he did in that time. But I will just tonight touch on the salient parts of his life. Now, David is seen as having a lot of various, well, before I say that, the name David means beloved. That's the meaning of the name. You may also find that it's sometimes there's another I'm looking to see, I thought I had it here. The name usually has another meaning, but I don't think but it's usually beloved that it's called. It's a Hebrew name. And David is believed to have ruled between 1003 to 970 BC. There or thereabouts. These things are sometimes not as accurate as you may want, but they're sometime around there. Um, he has had many roles. He's been shepherd and warrior and musician. He's been seen as an outlaw. He's been seen as an empire builder,
Murderer.
a faithful friend. And he's also been seen as saint and sinner and failed father. He's been seen as an ideal king. All these are summaries of who David is. Um, um, his name is mentioned, I believe, at least 1,000 times in the Bible, both in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. As you know, he's after Jesus comes under his lineage, and you will see his name mentioned in the Gospels, in the New Testament, and he's
You're also going to see him in the Psalms.
He's also referred to as having um, a city. You hear about the city of David, which is called Bethlehem. But you also seen too that sometimes Jerusalem, which was the center of where he was king of first, and you will know that David was not originally the king of Israel; he was the king of Judah in the south where Jerusalem is, and then afterwards he did become then king of Israel as well. Um, um, his prominent place is not only in political and military history of his people, but also in the poetry and theology, and then even in the in their hopes for the future. He's said to have written some of the Psalms in the Bible, which have poetry in them. He's also been said to have written or had some dealings with the book of Ecclesiastes. He's believed to have written the Songs of Solomon and the Wisdom of Solomon. Those are some of the books. I might be forgetting one or two of them, but those are some of the books.
Also, Proverbs as well too.
Yes, Proverbs is another one. Yes, Proverbs. In fact, he's been said, and I think sometimes this might be an exaggeration. I'm not sure, but it is said that he wrote about 3,000 proverbs. That he wrote about over 1,000 songs.
But there's only 150 Psalms.
Wait a minute, hold on. What am I saying? Wait a minute, hold 1 second. No, I think I may be confusing him with Solomon. My brain is fried. My brain is fried.
Solomon finished.
Solomon is the one that is said to have written about 3,000 proverbs and 1,000 songs. So
wow.
yes, not David. I'm mixing the two up now.
Yeah, because David died.
David is also David came on the scene. He's introduced in the Bible during the time when Israel was adjusting to this whole new era of a monarchy. Remember that when he came on the scene, Saul was the first monarch of Israel, and David even was anointed king to be the second king even before Solomon had died, and it was done more or less privately. But Israel had a long period of judges not having a centralized government, but judges dispensing justice for particular areas and so forth. And so that is when David came on the scene. He also came on the scene when Saul was no longer in favor with God. Samuel had anointed Saul as the first king. The Spirit of God came mightily on him. But then after his disobedience, God withdrew his spirit from him, and he was out there on his own. And so after his disobedience, God wanted someone else, a man after his own heart, to replace Saul as king. And we read that in 1 Samuel chapter 13 and verse 14. And obviously we know that those failures on Saul's part were because of his own accord. We learned last week when we were talking about Samuel that Saul went ahead and did a religious ban that Saul violated a religious ban when he fought against the Amalekites. Instead of taking out the whole nation, he protected and saved the life of the king Agag when he was not supposed to do that, and his men brought home the best of the spoils, and so that also caused his demise.
Yeah, I read some of that stuff, and then Samuel got really angry and ended up killing Agar.
Yeah. So then you find then that David's rise to fame is divided predominantly in 3 episodes. First, God instructed Samuel to find a man. He sent him to Bethlehem to a man named Jesse, who happened to be David's father, and told Samuel that one of his sons will be king. And when he invited Jesse and the boys, the sons, to a sacrifice. You find that when the first seven sons came in, God refused all of them, all turned them down as king. Now remember too that Jesse was the elder child of a prominent family of Judah, and he was also a prosperous shepherd, a prosperous sheep farmer. Just give me 1 second. Right. He was a prosperous sheep farmer, and you know that David was a shepherd looking after his father's sheep. So God rejected the seven sons. As we know, 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 7 tells us that God does not look on the outward appearance. That doesn't matter to God. God looks at the heart. And so when he was choosing, his choice was not to be on the outward appearance, but more so on the heart.
It's really weird because David was beautiful, wasn't he?
Yes, I mean, so I guess we could say David had it all. He had outward appearance and heart. That is what we could say, that he had outward appearance and heart, because God was more focused on the heart, but yet David had the Bible tells us he was handsome and had ruddy skin and beautiful eyes. So,
but also David got himself into a little bit of trouble.
He wasn't someone who wasn't, as the ladies will say, good to look at. So,
I know earlier I got out my pictures of when I was in France just to look at David again, because obviously, that's where he is. I thought,
yes.
I was reading, the chapter, and I thought, I'm going to get it out, have a look. And he
was
good. It's a beautiful, Michelangelo's beautiful.
Yes, Michelangelo piece. Yes.
Oh, that's David. Okay.
Yes, that's the famous David statue. Yes, right. Masterpiece. So after none of the sons were chosen by God, Samuel asks Jesse if there are any more sons, and he said, yes, there's a youngest who's out in the field tending the sheep. And he says, well, send for him. And when David arrived, God told him that's the one. And Samuel anointed David in the midst of his brothers. And we read in 1 Samuel 16, verse 13, that the Lord came mightily upon David from that day forward. And it goes back to that same whole notion of the Spirit of the Lord coming onto persons who were entrusted to do certain things, certain roles on behalf of God. And so you find that David was secretly marked as Israel's next king, and Samuel returns home in Ramah and continued to live his life. Now, the second episode, or both the second and the third episode, comes about in terms of David coming into the service of Saul and emphasizing a different strength of the future king. And we will talk a little bit more about this later, but you will find that Samuel was brought in to help to relieve Saul's despondency, and he was brought in as a musician, playing the harp, playing the lyre, and to help drive away Saul's depression. And so Saul agreed and to have someone come in. One of his men recommended David, and they describe him as skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, and prudent in speech, a man of good presence. And the Lord is with him. And you read that in verse 18 of 1 Samuel chapter 16. And it is believed that David was about 18 years of age at the time when he was summoned to do this. And he became not only Saul's personal musician, but also his permanent armor bearer. And
he also became Saul's son-in-law later on.
And we are told that Saul loved him greatly.
He also became Saul.
Yes, he would.
Son-in-law later on.
Yes, he would. And Saul loved him greatly, and we read that in verse 21.
Hey,
when we get yes.
No, it's really me. Hold on 1 second. Okay?
Yes, Pam.
So I'm just curious as why he was the 8th son instead of the 7th.
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
That is a good question. I forgot to check how many children Jesse had, though. I don't remember how many children Jesse had. If anybody can look that up.
8. He had 8 children.
Sons.
He had 8 sons, I think, but I wondered if he had daughters. I was not sure if he had daughters.
No, he had no daughters.
No, but he may not have had any daughters.
He was
So.
he had 8.
All right. So I can't answer that for you, Pam.
Figure it out.
I guess it's 7 plus 1.
7 plus 1, I guess. Yeah.
7 plus 1. 7 plus 1.
Yeah.
And then the third major episode with David in this younger life is the story of David and Goliath, which we all know from Sunday school days, where David is introduced as a warrior for God, and the Philistines and the Israelites, the armies, they were on opposite sides of the valley of Elah, which is west of Bethlehem, and the Philistines used to taunt the Israelites day after day, asking them to bring someone who can fight against their big man Goliath. And they could never find someone to do so. And we're told that Goliath, who was from Gath, and he was nearly 10 feet tall. Maybe another exaggeration, maybe not, we don't know. He used to wear the finest weaponry and armor. And it is even told that he was so fearsome that not even Saul, who was a mighty warrior, wanted to go up against him. And so one day, as Jesse sent David to tend the sheep to bring food for his brothers, when he got there, he realized and he heard Goliath's challenge, where it was expressed as David had contempt for such a man who would defy the armies of the living God. And we read that in chapter 17, verse 26. And so after expressing contempt at how Goliath spoke about the armies of the Israelite armies, David decided that he will fight the Philistine. And at first, Saul was kind of like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be joking, kind of thing. But what David had for him is that David was a guy who had already boasted about killing lions and bears and of his own trust in God. And so there was no one else who wanted to go up against Goliath. And this guy say he wants to go up against him. All right, go right ahead. And so he does. And when all he wanted, he didn't want any armor. He didn't want anything, only a sling and some smooth stones. That's all he wanted. And you will find that when we read chapter 17 of 1 Samuel in verse 43, that Goliath was infuriated by the fact that this guy came to him, much smaller than he is, nothing at all to fight against him, and Goliath has said something to the effect of, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And obviously he was enraged by it. However, David's response to him was more or less that, you come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin, but all I am coming to you is in the name of the Lord. And that differentiated the two. Whereas Goliath was coming with his might, David came in faith that God will protect him and deliver him. And so, yes.
He also said, "I will defeat you and cut off your head," didn't he?
Say that again?
David also said to Goliath, "I will defeat you and cut off your head."
Yes.
And he does.
And he does that. And he does that.
There you
And
go.
he does that.
Yeah.
And he will do that. And so when he do his slingshot, I don't know if you, in those days, I was telling the others this morning that in growing up as a boy, and some of you, we had something called a gutter perk, which was something that was like a Y shape. You held it on this vertical stem, and it would have this kind of a.
Boing.
Have you lost me?
No,
I have you.
having one.
You're frozen down here, but I have you.
Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can't see us?
I can see you. You can't hear me, Pam? No, Pam is frozen now.
Pam's frozen.
Can you hear me now,
my
Pam?
internet.
Yes, it is your internet because you
Yes.
just froze on me. Yes. So
Right.
we had something called a gutter perk, which was like a Y, and there was this band, this rubber band, not like a rubber band, but a black band made out of rubber that you would put a stone in and you will pull it back and let it go. And if it hits you, it can hit you really hard with the force that it went with. We used to play with those at school as boys growing up. But however, the slingshot that David would have probably used would have been more in like a kind of like a little pouch kind of thing with two long strings, and he would have swirled it like this, and it had to be real accuracy. And then when it was time to hit the target, it will go, he will hit it like, he will move it like that, and it went the string, and obviously it connected onto Goliath's forehead. And with the speed of the spinning and the way you send it, you could really do some real damage there. And obviously David did. And then after he did that, he took his sword and beheaded Goliath. And from the time that happened, he took, well, when you say he took his sword, meaning Goliath's own sword, because David didn't have any sword. He took the Goliath's sword and cut off his head, and from there, the Philistines started to run, and the Israelites pursue. And that's where we find, if you remember, Samson had started the demise of the Philistines, and in David's time, their demise ended, and that's how it ended after Goliath.
The demise.
So now, but now all of that happened, and obviously David started gaining fame, and people started recognizing him and liking him and all this sort of stuff. And Saul began to use David for important missions, which he always successfully completed. And he gave the young warrior, Saul gave David command over 1,000 troops. While that was going on, David was also developing a warm friendship with Saul's son, Jonathan. And that friendship would last until Jonathan's death. But as I said, David's fame and popularity grew, but as it grew, Saul became increasingly jealous of David.
Right.
Saul wanted to kill David.
And even the victories that David had, yes, Bryce, but yeah, even the victories on David's behalf, on the victories on Saul's behalf that David won, were even Saul saw them as a threat to him, because what started happening, as we read in 1 Samuel chapter 18 and verses 7 and 8, that people started shouting, Saul has slain his 1,000 and David his 10,000s or tens of thousands. And so when you hear someone telling you slay 1,000, but this other fella slain tens of thousands, obviously you're not going to take too kindly to that, particularly when you are the king. Wait a minute, I was looking for something here. Just give me 1 second, please. 18. Yeah, yes, right. It's tens of thousands, correct. And so with the growing jealousy then David became a target. And if you read the rest of chapter 18 and all of chapter 19, you will find that several times Saul made attempts to kill David. He started off in verse 11 of chapter 18 by trying to kill him with a spear on 2 occasions when David was playing music on the lyre, on the harp to soothe Saul. He also sent David on these military missions, hoping that somehow he will be killed. But at the same time, David always returned victorious. And this caused his dealings with Saul to become progressively worse, because once he feels he would have gotten killed, he wouldn't. It even happened when he offered his eldest daughter to David, Saul's elder daughter for David, and thinking that David would have been killed, he went and he gave the daughter to someone else. Saul did. And so when David returned, that daughter was already spoken for, the eldest daughter. But then again, Saul sent him back to battle. He had another daughter, a younger daughter named Michal, and she loved David. And you find that although Saul reduced David's military honor, and he had cheated him out of the first daughter, he would give Michal to David instead. However, it came with a caveat. For David to get the second daughter, or the younger daughter, he would have had to slaughter 100 Philistines. And so David felt he would have to kill 100 Philistines. And so David, making sure that there was no gray areas, he instead killed 200 of them, so that he knows that this daughter is mine. I want this young lady. And you also find too that in chapter 19, Saul sent out servants to kill David. On one occasion, Jonathan had to plea to rescind the order. Another time, Saul attempted to kill him with a spear. He also sent messengers to kill David. I want you to look at this one, because when I saw this morning, I said to myself, and where's the deacon? Is he still here? Yeah, the deacon is here. I said, the deacon will love this one, because it reminds us of Samson, but let's see the difference here. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 19. Let me see where I want to start from. Let's start at verse 11. I'll read it for you. 1 Samuel chapter 19 and verse 11. And it reads from verse 11, Saul sent men to David's house to watch it and to kill him in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, warned him, if you don't run for your life tonight, tomorrow you'll be killed. Remember, Michal is Saul's daughter. So Michal let David down through a window, and he fled and escaped. Then Michal took an idol and laid it on the bed, covering it with a garment and putting some goat's hair at the head. When Saul sent the men to capture David, Michal said, he is ill. Then Saul sent the men back to see David and told them, bring him up to me in his bed so that I may kill him. But when the men entered, there was the idol in the bed, and at the head was some goat's hair. Saul said to Michal, why did you deceive me like this and send my enemy away so that he escape? Michal told him, he said to me, let me get away. Why should I kill you? And so you see here, you remember, Delilah betrayed Samson. And now you see here a woman, Michal, who loves her husband. Yes, George?
How could she have an idol?
That's where I wanted to know.
Yeah, that's what I would like to know.
But the
All
thing
of
is
those
about
things did. Didn't they? I thought that was part of their the Philistines' face. They all had idols.
Somebody's gone.
Yeah, Lisa left.
Oh, say that again.
It's Dorothy.
What were you saying, Dorothy?
I was under the impression many Philistines or whatever, they had idols. That's one of the things that angered God. Because I don't know
Yes.
what kind of idols, it doesn't say.
But
Yes.
she wasn't a Philistine.
But she was not a
She was the daughter of Saul.
Who wasn't?
Michal was the daughter of
Oh.
Saul.
Yeah, so they weren't Philistines, right?
Yeah,
right,
she was not.
She was not, but she had an idol.
Yeah,
Oh,
she had an idol.
I know.
And I'm
Confused.
looking to see.
Oh boy, I did see it.
Yeah. It is quite possible. I was looking to see if I could see any reason, if there's any comment about that. The only explanation I can probably give for that is that this could have happened when David was fighting in some of his wars with others who were not obviously Israelites. They were from different nations, and may have captured it in that time. That's the only explanation. Not that it was something that they worshiped, not that he was worshiping it, but
Right.
but just had it. That's the only explanation that I could. Do all the rest of Bible's translations have idol written in it as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mine does.
Yes, mine does.
Yeah, that's the only. Let me just see something else. I'll be back.
Let me
Just
see.
let's see. I like to go to my Message Bible. Let me see what the Message Bible says. 1 Samuel, chapter 18, chapter 19,
Chapter 19.
and verse 16. Well, you see, the Message Bible says a dummy god. So that's what that says. A dummy god. Dummy God. That's what the Message. I like my Message Bible. But
God works. It works.
but that's the only explanation I can have. I will hasten a guess that it wasn't an idol that they were worshiping, but may have captured while in getting rid of the Philistines or any of these armies. If it was Solomon, I could probably say, well, one of Solomon's wives brought it in, because Solomon married these wives from all over the place. I could have said, we could easily have said that, but with David, it is hard to say why there would have been an idol that she would have put in the bed there. But good question. If I find the answer, George, I'll let you know. But,
Okay.
But it's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah, so the point I was just making there is that he was, you'll see the difference between how Michal was to her husband, as say, I mean, Samson wasn't married to Delilah, but he did have a first wife who also betrayed him. But it just shows you the difference there, that she was willing to protect her husband even to the even over her own father, which is noble of her. Yeah, let's see here. Right. So, and you will also find that, as I said, there's numerous, if you go through chapter 19, there are numerous times when Saul tried to kill. He sent message after this occasion, and David escaped to Ramah, where Samuel lived, even then he sent messengers to kill David, and they couldn't. That whenever they got there, they used to started out prophesying. And even when Saul went himself, he ended up laying naked all day and all night, strip off his clothes, because he was captured by this ecstatic spirit that was going on there. And then you also find in chapter 23 and chapter 26 that Saul also sought to kill David. We also know that David also had the opportunity to kill him as well on a couple of occasions. In fact, he was so close to him, and Saul didn't even know he was so close to him, that he was able to cut off a piece of his garment and to show him that, you know, I could have killed you and I spared your life. And it abided, it gave some time, but at the same time, you find that it did not stop Saul from feeling the way he felt about David. One thing about the friendship between David and Jonathan is that Jonathan had hoped that his father will reconcile with David, but he realized too that the depth of his father's disgust for David was more than that reconciliation wasn't going to happen. It was far more than Jonathan had imagined. And even so, when Saul even tried on occasions to kill David, Jonathan jumped in and defended him. And in the final analysis, they both said goodbye, but they swore that they will always be friends and their descendants will be friends forever. And as you know, Jonathan was killed along with two other brothers and his father Saul in a battle. What else do I want to say about him? And all of that you can read in 1 Samuel and then going into 2 Samuel. Now, when Saul died, David, well, before I say before Saul died, you will see in 2 Samuel chapter 1, there's in 2 Samuel chapter 1, there's a lament from David after learning of Saul and Jonathan's death, that is mentioned there. The song, or sometimes it's called a lament of the bow. That is in verses 17 to 27, and this was also one thing about David I found is that when David lose someone that was close and dear to him, like a son or a best friend or what have you, his grief is really pronounced. You will see it here with Jonathan. You will see it when his own son, and I will mention that later. Oh gosh, what was his name? Not Absalom. When Absalom died, he was bewailing, "Oh, Absalom, Absalom, my son Absalom." He was really his grief is very much pronounced. But when David became king, as I said earlier, he was king first of Judah, the southern kingdom. He was not king of the northern kingdom. He became king at the age of 30. He ruled for 40 years, dying at the age of 70. And if you remember in the Psalms, it talks about our lifespan is 80 years and 10. And though some of us may live 80 years, we still die. That 80 years and 10 comes from David's age, the length of his life, which was 70 years. So that's where the 80 years and 10 comes from. The other part of it is that while David became king of Judah, Abner, which was a commander, Saul's former commander, pushed and probed and so forth to get one of Saul's sons, one called Ishbosheth, to be king of Israel, because he felt that if David became king, that David would probably try to kill him. And so, but you see, the thing is about it is you cahoots and try to get something happen, and then it sours. And when it sours, then you find that you go back to the same person that you were trying to not have a relationship with, and that's what happened, because Saul's son that was become king of Israel only lasted for 2 years, and it was the same Abner who went and to David to more or less have him removed. And eventually David became also the king of Israel, and he was very much a unifying force in the kingdom, both Israel and Judah together, because at one time they were separate kingdoms, and he was a unifying force in that. The other thing about David is that we know that David wanted to build a temple. And God told him, no, he will not be the one to build a temple, that Solomon will be the one who will build a temple. And so David chose Jerusalem as the capital and the religious center of the nation. And I think all of you know about the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is the greatest symbol of Israel's faith, and it contains the stones, the tablets of the 10 Commandments, and by this time would have been in existence for over 2.5 centuries. And when they were seeking to move it, we will know that there were 2 attempts to move it. I think there were. The first time it was falling, and this guy stopped it from falling, and you were not supposed to touch the Ark of the Covenant, and so by touching it, he died. And then the second time they were able to move it, and once they got it moved to where they wanted it to be located, it is believed that David danced before it in a short apron that was worn by priests, and his wife, the same Michelle, was not pleased, and from then on was not pleased with him dancing and behaving like that, and she confronted him, and they argued, and the quarrel soured their relationship. But always remember that although that Michelle was a good wife, you know, David's heart was with Bathsheba, the one who, the one that he, or Bathsheba. We say English Bathsheba, but it could be Bathsheba as well. But he should have never have killed Uriah the Hittite. That was wrong of him.
Right. That's right.
Yes. So he met Bathsheba, and one day he loved her. He had a relationship with her. She got pregnant. She was a married woman to Uriah. And after she got pregnant, he brought Uriah home from battle with the expectation that Uriah would go and lie with her, and then the child could be seen as Uriah's child. That didn't go as David hoped wanted it to go, because instead of Uriah going home to Bathsheba, he went since he was still on duty, or he felt he was still on duty. He decided not to go home. And when David asked him, well, why haven't you gone home? He said, well, you know, because I am on duty and so forth. And so David sent him back into battle, put him on the front line, and had him killed, unfortunately. And so you will find then that Uriah was killed, and Nathan the prophet condemned him for it. And the thing about David, which is important and important even for us today, is that although he did what he did, David repented deeply. And this is one of the lessons you can learn from his life. That he was willing to honestly admit his sins, and that is, the first step of dealing with our sins. So he repented deeply. They lost a child. The baby died, just as Nathan said he would. But David grieved, and after he was finished grieving, he shook that off, and he went on to live the life that, in terms of commanding and in battles, and he went up against Ammon and succeeded in making it a vassal state and all that good stuff. But the good thing to learn from David is that David was able, he admitted he was wrong, he was sorry for what he did, and that is important, and that's what made him to such a great king. The other part that came, and I will say that he and Bathsheba went on to have a couple more sons, of which, as you know, Solomon was one of them. Solomon was way down the line of David's sons. I can't remember if he's like number 10 or something like that out of all of them. But Solomon will become king because, for lack of a better phraseology, Bathsheba was his favorite. But the other thing we need to find out about David is, or learn about David, is that in David's household, David's family, it was not squeaky clean. There was a lot of turmoil going on as well. There was rape and murder and deception and revenge among his children, particularly. Absalom, which was one of his sons, will become estranged from his father. And Absalom was very popular and also attractive as well. And his resentment eventually took the form of an open rebellion, and he even marched on Jerusalem in a surprise assault. And David abandoned Jerusalem and fled for his life, and he quickly assembled an army under the command of Joab and others. But yes, Absalom was one of his sons who rebelled against him. And even although he rebelled against him, when his son died, David was brokenhearted. He even wished that he had died instead of his son. And this is where I talk about the whole notion of him crying out, "Oh, Absalom, Absalom, my son, Absalom." So you see that as well happening within his family. You would also find that there was also his son Adonijah, who was the heir apparent, and tried to assert his claim to the throne, but didn't. And this happened after David had abdicated the throne, ending his 40-year reign, and his wife Bathsheba and Nathan, the prophet, all tried to get him to make Solomon king, which eventually happened. So when we look at David's reign, it was marked by great military and political strength. He was a poet. He was a writer of psalms. He was a player of music. He was ambitious. He was tough. He was politically astute. He had a deep and passionate love for family and friends, and most of all for God. He was a man who was truly knew when he was wrong and admitted it and sought forgiveness, God's forgiveness for it. And as I said, even though his greatness is flawed, he was still a model of faith because he was a man close to the heart of God. And as we know from whose line the promised Messiah was to come, which God told him would happen. So he very much has gone down as one of the greatest king of Israel, and he has been described by God as a man after his own heart. He had some weaknesses. He had some mistakes. He committed adultery with Bathsheba. He arranged the murder of Uriah. He obeyed God in taking a census of the people. And he probably did not deal decisively with his children and what they were doing. So those are some of the things that he did that were wrong. But as I said, he was honest in admitting his mistakes, and he trusted in God, and he worshiped God. Those were extremely vital to him. He had, he had 4 main wives that are mentioned, and there were others that were there as well. And I know he had a number of sons, and he had daughters as well. Tamar was one of his daughters. That is the one that is mostly mentioned, is Tamar as one of his daughters. Any questions on David?
Nope.
The thing that struck me as I've been reading all the way through today was how everybody wept then. There was everybody mourned and wept, and it seemed like anything that happened, they all wept together.
Who is this?
When I'm up to 16.
Yes. Okay.
But it seemed like everyone seemed.
When they mourn, they weep. Yes.
They wept.
I've heard
Yeah.
that.
Well, we still do it. We still do that today. We still do that today. In fact, I'll tell you this. I had these 2 ladies who came into the church this morning at the 10 o'clock healing service, and they came in a little late because by the time they came in, I had already finished doing the healing and the healing part of the service, and they came into the church and they were in floods of tears.
Oh yeah.
And I had never seen them before.
Oh no.
They not know who they're concerned. But they came in, they sat down, and then when I was about to set the altar for Mass, you probably could see it in the video. I don't know if Teresa focused on that. But when I was about to start to set the table for the Eucharist, one of them got up and came right up at the altar and knelt down. So
No.
I had then to change course because I had to stop preparing the altar and go down to her to find out what was going on, because she was really crying, weeping at the altar. And then when she told me what was going on, her mother had died this early hours of this morning. And then I realized who she was, because I had gone to the mother only yesterday to give her last rites, or what we used to call last rites. I gave the mother yesterday afternoon. So then I call up the other sister who was not crying as much, but this one was. And I think this one was too, because this lady had 5 children, 4 of them lived here in this area, and this one lived in Illinois. So, she barely got here in time before the mother died. In fact, the others were saying that probably the mother was prolonging that long for her to arrive. And she got in that after she got to, I think she said she got to the hospice unit around 7 at night, and the mother died just after midnight. So it just shows you
that was the same. My mother held on until I flew to England.
Yeah.
It's one of the things they do, I think.
And people do.
I'm going to wait for Bruce to get there before I do anything.
Yeah, and people do that. I've seen that happen countless times.
Yeah.
In fact, it either happens that way, or sometimes people are waiting for the priest to come. I had a situation, or at least to speak with them. I had a situation where there was this guy in my last parish, and one guy, he was a landscaper, and he did a lot of work for the church. Really, really good guy. But his wife took ill and died, and I did her service and her interment, and then he died like a couple of years later. At first he moved up to his daughter in Jacksonville and took ill and died. But just before he died, I would speak to him because he couldn't speak or anything of the sort. He couldn't talk to you or anything. So I would just call the daughter periodically, and she sometimes will call me to find out how he's doing, that sort of stuff. And I said, and she called me one day and she said to me, "Father Tony, I feel that my dad wants to hear your voice, because I can't understand why he should be gone by now." And she said, "But I just feel something tells me he wants to hear your voice." So I said, "Fine, put him on. I will talk with him." But he couldn't talk back to me. But he could still hear me. And I spoke with him, and within, I think it was 3 hours later, he was gone.
Oh boy.
When she called me back, and she said to me, "Father, I thank you." And she said, he's gone.
You gave him
I could not believe it. And she said, I felt he was just waiting to hear your voice. Because he and I had a wonderful relationship in the parish, and he would come in, even when outside he was doing landscaping for the church. He would come inside and sit down and chat, because he had men who were helping the job. He was the owner of it, overseeing it, and he and I would sit down and chat for quite some time. We had a wonderful relationship, and she felt that he was waiting to hear from me. And so when I spoke to him, within 3 hours, he was gone.
Yeah.
So these things do happen. Okay, let me just touch quickly on Solomon. What time is it? 7:03. Okay, we still got a little bit of time. Let me just touch quickly on Solomon. I mean, Solomon is not as extensive as David.
Within Kings, right? One king.
Solomon starts, I think, from 2 Samuel. Let me see.
No, 1 Kings.
Wait a minute, hold on 1 second. Let me just see what am I doing. Hold on a minute. Let me see.
Yeah, Solomon doesn't start till 1 Kings.
Yeah, 1 Kings chapter 1 to 14 is
chapter 2.
Hold on 1 second. Let me just see something here. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay, yeah. There is mention of Solomon in 2 Samuel chapter 12 and verse 24, where it talks about, then David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and he went to her and made love to her. She gave birth to a son, and they named him Solomon. The Lord loved him, and because the Lord loved him, he sent word through Nathan the prophet to name him Jedidiah. So that is the first mention of Solomon in 2 Samuel chapter 12 and verse 24. And that name, Jedidiah, means loved by the Lord. So that was the first mention of Solomon in the book. Hold on. Okay, yeah. But Solomon is mostly mentioned in First Kings. The first 14 chapters, and he's also mentioned in First Chronicles and also in Second Chronicles. There's a lot in the first 9 chapters, and then also books, as I said, accredited to Solomon, or the book of Proverbs, particularly chapters 1 to 21, and Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon, and the Wisdom of Solomon, which is a apocryphal book. So there is some writings, and the name Solomon means peaceable, or peace. That is what it means, or it could also mean prosperity as well. Solomon is seen as the wisest man of his era. Some will say the wisest man in the world because of that passage in the Bible. Let me see if I can find it. Is it first? Let's turn to First Kings. Let's see if I can find it. First Kings, chapter. Where is it? Yes, First Kings chapter 3, and okay, like we will start from verse 9. Let me see. Should I say verse 9?
All right.
Yes, you did.
All right. Let's start from verse 7. Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? Then, and the Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my decrees and commands as David your father did, I will give you a long life. Then Solomon awoke and he realized it had been a dream. So you see that there. But God was speaking to him through that media.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
David did break one of the 10 commandments. He was adulterous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, he did break commandments with God.
Yeah, but he
suffered.
But also yes. Also, he admitted he was wrong.
Right.
And he also asked for God's forgiveness.
Okay.
Which is
just clarifying.
Just
clarifying that, because
which is very important. You see, the thing is about it is, as I said, we are human beings. We will fall short. But the major thing is to admit you're wrong and to seek God's forgiveness. And by doing that, by doing that, you God will forgive you once you are really penitent. And that is one of the things that you, as I said earlier, you can learn from David's life. It wasn't to say he did it and he didn't care. He was sorry, and he paid for it because he lost a child. But at the same time, he was sorry that he did what he did, and God forgive him. So that is extremely important. Extremely important. Solomon came to the throne of Israel in a what we could say is an unprecedented manner, in the sense that where Saul and David had a kind of a triumphant military war record and a charismatic personality to be anointed king, he didn't. He came on the push and the prod from Bathsheba and from Nathan. They both influenced David before he died to make Solomon king, and so Solomon became king. But as we know about Solomon, I mean, not that David wasn't. David was a ladies' man too, but Solomon was way more a ladies' man. And even although the Bible mentions that he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and I think that might be a little bit exaggerated, because I cannot see how you could.
I think that would kill him.
I can't see how you could keep up with 1,000 women in 1 year. You
No, I don't think so
probably
either.
see them once every 3 years or something.
That would put him in a grave.
And not to mention, I don't know how you can remember their names. But as somebody said this morning at class, oh, you just have to call them honey. Everyone is honey. Hello, honey.
That's true, babe, honey. Yeah.
You know, I think though that might be a little bit exaggerated. But one of the things about him is that his wives were not Hebrew women. A lot of them were not. They were women from the Hittites, the Moabites, the Edomites, the Ammonites, and they were all Gentile, a lot of Gentile women. Yeah, and he went into what we would call today these politically arranged marriages, where the king married the daughter of the next king in the next area, so that they can have political alliances. And this still happened today. I mean, Iris will tell you, Queen Elizabeth was married to a man from Greece. You know, and there was. What did you say? Pam?
What's going on with Kate? No.
He was actually raised in Denmark.
Well, he was raised in Denmark, but he was supposed to be a Greek. So
Father, can I share a story with you about multiple wives?
Say that again, Deacon.
May I share a story with you about multiple wives?
Oh, okay. Yeah, hold on a minute. Hold on. I'll let you share the story. Hold on. What were you saying else, Pam? What? You were finished saying what you had to say?
I did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know he had upbringing in Denmark, but you know, he was supposed to be, whenever they talk about him as being.
All right. I want to hear about multiple wives.
But go ahead, Alan.
Okay. I was a social worker in Philadelphia and worked with a woman from the United States who came from Philadelphia. She got involved with a man from, I think it was Nigeria. One of the Muslim
From where?
countries.
From where? A man from where? Oh, Nigeria. Okay, sorry.
Okay. They got married, and she went to live with him in Africa. And the culture there is very different in terms of multiple wives. He was pressured to have a second wife, and when she found out that he had a second wife and he would refuse to give up his second wife, she decided she did not want to continue the marriage, and in order to do that, she had to virtually sneak out of the country with her two children. This is a common thing, I think, in some cultures.
Even today, you're speaking, yes.
Yes, even today, yes.
Which is sad.
I mean, she's lucky that she was able to live.
Yeah.
That he did not come after her, because the culture in many of the African countries is you don't do that at all. So I mean, she's lucky that she got out, and especially to taking the children. I could imagine that did not go down well at all. But yes, you are correct, and it still happens today. It does. It does. One of the things that you probably know the story. One of the stories that Solomon uses wisdom was the time where he had to solve a dispute over an infant, where these two women had given birth to children. One of the women's babies died, and then these two women were fighting over, saying it was not their baby that died. This is their baby. So it came before Solomon, and when Solomon heard what they were saying, he says, "Okay, I will cut the baby in half and give one half and give the next one half." And one lady said, "Yeah, King, do that." And the other one said, "No, give her the child." And Solomon discerned that the one who was willing to not have that baby killed to give the other woman the child, that was the true mother. And so the mother got the child, the rightful mother got her child back. So that was part of one of the stories where Solomon discerned or uses wisdom to do that. He was also, as I said, he acts for discernment between good and evil as well. He had he established a strong monarchy, centralized monarchy. He even established a tax system for the people. So if you think they were paying taxes back then too. So this tax thing has been going on for a very long time. But he developed a tax system for his people. He divided the nation into 12 regions. And he undertook very extensive building projects, including the temple. Remember, he was the one that God ordained to build the temple, and which his father had dreamed of. I'm looking to see what else I could. And also, too, he was very much a wealthy person. He was known for his wealth. And even so, when the Queen of Sheba came to Jerusalem, she came because it is believed that she came because of Solomon's wisdom, as well as for the trade, the way he had established his kingdom, and how prominent it was. There is no one of the things, I don't know if you've ever heard about Zadok the priest. Have you ever heard that music piece? Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anointed Solomon king. You should Google it. Well, you can put it into search it in YouTube, and you will hear it. Beautiful piece, a beautiful music. But Solomon was made king by Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet. And so you find that is mentioned in First Kings. I think it was mentioned. I'm trying to think what else that is important as far as Solomon is concerned. As I said, he was an extravagant builder, and there's a whole lot of information on that in First Kings and various measurements as to
Yeah.
how he built the temple and all of that, which you can read when you can't sleep, and learn more about that.
Father,
Yes, please, Iris.
we had a Bible class a few years ago, and it was about the temple, and we built it. You know, someone had got the paper, but we were able to build it as it was just a little small thing, you know. But it was so interesting. We did. That's all we did. That was about the temple, and it was quite interesting. My husband, because he loved anything like that, but
Yes.
we went page by page, and it was a whole series we did. You know, it was good.
Wow.
Nice, nice, nice.
Well, I'm learning it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
And it was so beautiful, you know. And then of course we had the pictures to show it. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it, Iris. You have the picture?
Do you have a picture of it?
No,
Oh,
the teacher had it, and the furnishings and everything. Just she would show them up on the screen.
Nice.
Bob and Gail Schneider were there as well. It was so interesting, it really was. Yeah, beautiful.
And when the temple was built, the Ark of the Covenant came. Then that's where it was to be located permanently. When it was
amazing.
But Solomon was very much an effective builder. He really sought to build an empire in Israel. He even had, he had built this house of the forest of Lebanon, which was perhaps a weapons storehouse. He also built private quarters, and a house for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married, which was another political allegiance in Egypt. So early in his reign, he did a lot in terms of really building various buildings to accommodate his wives, all these wives that he had. But he lived.
I'm sorry. Where did he do these buildings? All in Judah?
He would have done them in Israel, because by that time the kingdom was won. So it was called.
Do you think there's any remnants of these pillars? I'm reading the bronze pillars and stuff like that today in Israel, in Jerusalem. Do you think there's any historical, artifact left? Because I've been
well, you have to remember that the temple was destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed and rebuilt.
Not then.
So the temple that was in Solomon's time did not remain. The temple was destroyed and had to be, remember Jesus himself talked about destroying the temple and rebuilding it in 3 days. And he was talking about himself, about his staff and all of that. But also, too, he was alluding to the fact that the temple was going to be destroyed, and it was rebuilt, and it was destroyed again. Yes, Pam?
I have a video from the Met of the inside of Solomon's temple, if you want to see it. It's about a minute long.
Oh, yeah. Put it on. Share the screen.
So where is this?
It's virtual reality.
Oh.
Can you see it?
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And you see
wow. How did I miss that?
The golden altar of incense.
Oh my, beautiful.
Ark of the Covenant there.
Beautiful.
Yes, it is. Right. I'm glad it had that picture.
Cool.
To see what it would have looked like. Yes. Good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
That was very nice. Thank you. I'm a visual person.
Thank you,
Helps.
Pam.
I'm a very visual person.
Trying
Yes.
to
So
get
you
back
see
to that.
you had an idea of what
Mhm.
that looked like as
No
well.
problem.
Yeah, you
But,
can see the little people in it just for scale too.
mhm.
Yeah. Okay. How big it was.
So it will show you how big this
Yeah.
it was.
Wow. Beautiful.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. That's no problem.
That's nice.
Thank you. And the temple was in Jerusalem. It's the headquarters for the Israelites and the Hebrew people. That's the place they believe that Jesus the Messiah will come from, and all that good stuff. And so it's a if you ever get the chance to go there, you should go. Mind you, though, I will tell you this, that it's very much, you would think that because it's Israel, that it will be Jewish, totally Jewish dominated, but it's not. There's a very large mosque there, which tells you that there are Muslims living, lots of Muslims living there as well. So, if you were a part of the event we had on Saturday night, you would have heard the Imam talked about this building where there's 3 sections. One is Muslim, one is Christian, and one is Jewish, and that is actually true, which tells you about the diversity of Jerusalem today. So yeah.
May I ask
yes,
why he called this the House of the Forest of Lebanon?
No, that is something different. That was something different. That's not the temple. Oh no, that's not the temple.
All right, thank you.
The House of the Forest of Lebanon was probably just maybe a kind of like a storehouse kind of thing.
Okay.
That was not the temple. No, that was not the temple.
All right, thank you.
It would not be called the House of Lebanon.
I know, so I was a little confused. Okay.
No.
Gotcha. There's the temple. Okay.
No, that was not the temple.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think what else I can capture out of this about Solomon. Anyone has any questions? But the major thing with Solomon is to recognize that, as I said, he also goes down in the books. If you were to list the good and bad kings of Israel, he would have gone down as a good king of Israel as well. Not as good as his dad, but at the same time, he would have been classified as good. One of the things that he did was to change. He tried to change the definition of kingship in ancient Israel, where unlike his father, he used to offer sacrifices and bless his people, and taking on some priestly functions as well, which his father never did. But he did that kind of thing. He also very much rely on the prophets for divine messages. David did as well, but Solomon was able to communicate more directly with the Lord, and that is an interesting note about him.
Now, Father, in my Bible it says, as Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart.
Aw.
Wives?
Heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God. Is that?
Wait, I didn't hear that. Say that again.
Where are you?
As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David, his father, had been. So that was his downfall at the end, was it?
Yes. As I said, he was not like his father in that regard. His father, even despite his father's shortcomings, his father was still a very deeply faithful man to God. And his father recognized that in order for him to continue to rule as king in the way that God expected him to, he needed God and he needed to be faithful, and which means in able to allowing God to not remove his spirit from him, he need to be penitent. He need to really to be repentant and to truly ask God for his forgiveness. And that is a good thing about David, that he was able.
And I think he was a humble man too. I think David struck me as being humble, whereas
he was very much so. He was. So that helped him a lot in terms of, yes, we know he did wrong, but yes, he did not see it as a pat on the back, but he was very contrite about what he did, and sought to be faithful to God. So he was faithful, and when he wasn't faithful, he made sure he tried to get back on the bandwagon to be faithful, and he did the steps that will bring that about, which other kings of Israel never did.
Well, he was a shepherd, wasn't he? So he was looking on. David was a shepherd.
Correct.
So once a shepherd, always a shepherd. You look after. It's true.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, and that's why too. And that's what
he's his people as
and you're right, exactly, and you're correct, because he was very much a people's king. He looked after his family. He looked after the people. It wasn't to say that he looked after his family and he didn't look after his people. He did both. He did both. And you're right. The shepherd motive is very much symbolic of that, because you look after your sheep, you know them all by name, and you took care of them, and he saw, and he would have seen his people like that. So that's a very good.
Himself as a sheep too. I think he would have seen himself as a sheep for the Lord.
Well, exactly. Well, he was probably, and I think I used this in a sermon once, he would probably have seen himself as a sheepdog, where he was the one who rounded up all the sheep. But at the end of the day, God is the shepherd. And that is why he always still went back to God. That's why I said, read a story, read the Bible, read about him. He always still went back to God and was extremely penitent. Even Absalom, who betrayed him, who he still, when he died, was very saddened by Absalom dying. So yeah.
It's a lovely reading. It's a beautiful reading, I think.
Yes, it is. It is beautiful reading. It is beautiful reading. I
enjoyed it.
Yes, David is one of the major characters in the Bible, the major people in the Bible, and you can't get away from him, because if you get away from him, you get away from Jesus. I mean, God promised him that his dynasty will have the descendant Jesus, the Messiah. So he
said that he was mentioned more times in the Bible than anyone else. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
He's been mentioned over 1,000 times in the Bible,
Amazing.
both in the Old and in New Testament. He is just that kind of a person. And I mean,
so one for every wife.
Probably. Never thought of that, but you might be right. And concubine.
And concubine.
You might be right. It goes back to when Peter denied Jesus, Jesus gave him the opportunity to reverse those 3 denials by telling him to, do you love me? Jesus asked him 3 times. Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He says, yes. He says, feed my sheep and tend my lambs and tend my sheep and all of that. So, you never know. That's a good one. All right, I think we next week we are going to do. Who are we going to do next week? I don't have my thing here.
Next week.
Ahab and Jezebel.
Are we off next week?
Off next week.
No, we were supposed to be,
Yeah, he
Oh,
changed
okay.
it.
but
Nobody
I
listened.
changed that. I sent you a new. I
Oh,
sent you a
did.
new schedule. We
We
were
did.
Oh, I didn't
supposed to
get it.
be, but
Okay.
I forgot. Did you not receive it?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I will
I
try
didn't,
to
I don't
send
think I did.
I will
Okay.
try to send it because I resended it
He did tell
because
us.
I
so.
had to change it because I had class for May 8th, but I'm going to be out of the state on May 8th. I think I have to be in North Carolina, I think it is.
Yeah,
So,
it's
so,
Ahab and Jezebel.
hmm?
So,
Ahab and
Ahab,
Jezebel.
So the 8th is not now, we are not going to have
Okay.
class on the 8th. I have to attend a synod concerning general convention.
hold on.
So,
So who are we doing? Ahab and Jezebel?
oh, so we're going from a good king to a bad king.
Oh, yeah. Are we?
Oh,
Are
yeah.
we? Are we?
Not- So
We're
next
going to-
week is
yes,
what?
so is that what is next week?
It was
Ahab and
Jezebel.
Jezebel?
Jezebel?
on April 17th. I mean, we missed some weeks. It was Ahab and Jezebel.
Wait a minute, hold on a minute. Let
He
me
has
see
to
what
tell us,
let me
right?
see what is coming next week. Hold on, let me just
Please
double
tell
check
us.
quickly.
We don't want to
Just give me 1 second
Ahab and
quickly.
Jezebel.
Too many people are talking. Okay.
Let me just check quickly. Hold on, let me just see, because I know I
Jezebel.
changed it. So let me see who it is for next week. Next week is, yeah, Ahab and Jezebel, March 27th.
Aha, very good.
Ahab and Jezebel. So we'll be going from two good kings, or a good king and a reasonably good king, now to a bad king. Oh, here we go. So
Okay.
it'll be Ahab and Jezebel. And you will realize on May 8th now, we are not going to have class because I have to attend a Province 4 meeting. So
How do I, excuse me, how do I find Ahab and Jezebel? That's not a book. in the
I
Bible.
will send you,
I'm
let
not-
me send you the passages for it. I will send them all to you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
I'll do that tonight. I'll do that
I
tonight for you.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Can you
I'll
send
do it
me
right-
this? Can you send me this revised list,
I'll
please?
send it to you.
Yes, I will
Thank
send,
you.
huh? Oh, you
I'll
just
send
send
it.
it to her?
I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks,
because I was
Pam.
going to send, I'm probably going to send it out to everyone again if some
Go
people didn't
ahead.
have
Send
it.
it out to everyone
Oh,
again.
go ahead. That's
Yeah, send it
that's
out.
That's what
better.
you do.
Let me send it out
Yeah,
again in
I've had
case
it, but
some
it's
people
gone now.
don't have it. So let me just jot down what I'm sending to you all momentarily. I'm going to send you the readings for Ahab and Jezebel,
And
so that I
revise.
don't forget how. I'm going to send you the
Revise.
schedule, the program schedule, and I'm also going to send you the handout on the brief handouts on David and Solomon. Okay, so I'm going
Okay.
to send all three of those now to you all. Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Two will be attachments and one will be embedded in the email. Okay.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Marilyn, for
Thank
starting us off.
you.
Okay. Good night.
Have a good night. Love to everyone. Okay.